So, this is actually the first piece of Pac-Man media that we're reviewing on this channel, which is interesting. Not only is Pac-Man one of the most iconic video game characters of all time, it definitely should be mentioned with the Marios and Sonics of the world. Now, I'm not going to do a deep dive into the Pac-Man franchise, we'll be here all day and all night. But since Pac-Man is back in the spotlight with Pac-Man Museum Plus, why not take a look at this collection? Let's get into it. So Pac-Man is one of those media franchises that stood the test of time. Whether it's the games ranging from literally every platform, merchandise, movie and television appearances, and his well-deserved spot on the Smash Bros. Roster. So you can say Pac-Man has been relevant in every generation of gaming in one way or another. Now my first exposure to Pac-Man as a kid was Pac-Man 2 The New Adventure on the Sega Genesis. Yeah, I remember having a little fun with this title, but remember it being hard as hell. Later on, I would go on to play the Pac-Man World series on the PS1 and PS2, and World Rally, which is a super underrated kart racer. That's pretty much where my Pac-Man experiences stop. Over the years, there's been a few games released. Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventures is the first that come to mind, which was a 3D platformer based off the cartoon series. Not sure if the series or the game was any good, but I'm kinda curious. So Pac-Man Museum Plus is a brand new compilation showcasing everything from the classic Pac-Man to some of the arcade games that I personally never heard of. Now, a Pac-Man compilation is nothing new. Back on the Game Boy Advance, we had the Pac-Man collection, and also the Pac-Man Museum back on the Xbox 360 and PS3 that also featured many of the Pac-Man classics. Oh, let's not forget about the Namco Museum series, which also featured some versions of Pac-Man. Pac-Man Museum Plus features about 14 games from the Pac-Man series, some of them being very familiar like the OG Pac-Man and more recent hits like Pac-Man 256. You also have some very obscure titles. Well, obscure to me, games like Pac-Moto or Pac-and-Roll. So there's a nice collection of games here, and for those who are fans of classic Pac-Man and his arcade hits, you have something here for you as well. Now, I noticed there's no Miss Pac-Man or Baby Pac-Man, and due to legal issues, I wouldn't expect to see Miss Pac-Man anytime soon, but that's a whole nother topic. Now, one thing I can't help but to mention, the main menu and main UI is essentially an arcade that is customizable, but you're controlling a 3D model of Pac-Man, which brings the question, where's the Pac-Man World games? I mean, seriously, what's the deal? If Klonoa can get a modern re-release, so can the Pac-Man World trilogy. I think these games are super underrated and don't really get mentioned in the 3D platform discussion. Even games like World Rally, Miss Pac-Man Maze Madness. I mean, the Pac franchise has some pretty solid games on the 3D side, so why not showcase those as well? So looking at the games actually featured in this collection, starting with the classic Pac-Man. This is a game that I'm sure everyone has played at one point or another, whether you played this in the arcades or the hundreds and thousands of different ports on consoles and other devices. The whole objective is to eat all the dots in the stage while avoiding the ghosts. Not only that, but you can go for a high score by eating the ghost by collecting the power pellet or eating the fruit that appears in the maze. Fun game and an undeniable classic. Super Pac-Man, which was Namco's follow-up to the wildly successful original. I think it's fair to say this game was not nearly as popular as the original, but I will say I had a lot of fun with it, and the gameplay was pretty decent. Instead of collecting power pellets and pellets, you're eating fruits and keys. It's a pretty unique take on the Pac-Man formula, and I can definitely see the appeal. Pac-and-Pow. I didn't really care for this one too much. It has a very similar design to Super Pac-Man, but now you have this friendly ghost that helps Pac out by bringing in fruits and such. The game was, it's okay, but definitely not one I'll be returning to in this collection. I will say though, I love the artwork of the cover for this game. It's something about those 80s video game promo art that's really appealing to me, especially in the Pac-Man universe. Now, Pac-Land. This game is great, and considering it's the game that really kind of paved the way for 2D platformers as a genre, you have to give its props for that. Even though I had a lot of fun with this title, I can never get past that damn water gap. Is this something that I'm doing wrong with the timing of the jump or what? But anyway, fun game, and it's cool to see where platformers came from. It also has a stage based on it in Smash Bros, so that's pretty cool too. Pac-Mania. Okay, now look, I love the aesthetic of the game. I really do. It has like this 3D Lego look to it. The gameplay, however, this is where the game kind of falls short for me. Yes, Pac-Man can jump, which is an interesting mechanic, but overall, the speed of the game is pretty slow, and I just wasn't feeling it just past the overall aesthetic, you know? Pac-Attack. Now look, this game here, I had quite a bit of fun with. I love puzzle games like Super Puzzle Fighter and Puyo Puyo Tetris. So yeah, this game was right up my alley. I could definitely see this being a game I'll go back to. Definitely a nice take on the Tetris formula with a little bit of Pac-Man thrown in there, you know? Pac in Time. I guess this is supposed to be some sort of adventure game for the Super Famicom. I wasn't a fan of this at all. The controls were a bit slippery, the level design was just not that fun, and all you're doing is collecting all the dots on the map. Not a fan of this one. I'm sure this game has a cult following or some sort of fandom, but it wasn't for me. Now, Pac-Man Arrangement, both the arcade and the PSP version. Listen, this game was a gem to me. I had tons of fun with this title. I love the aesthetic, and I love how each of the islands had a different gimmick, like acceleration pads or teleportation pads. It was really fun. I felt the PSP version was a little bit easier, but both versions of Pac Arrangement, it was great fun, and I'll definitely be returning to this one. Now, Pac-Man Championship Edition, this is actually one of my favorite revamps of the classic Pac-Man game. I used to play this all the time on my Xbox 360, and to this day, it's just as fun as I remember. It has this addicting nature to it. I think this game was a great way to introduce new players and gamers to the Pac-Man formula. I love it. Now, Pac-Motos and Pac-and-Roll, these were games that were released on the Nintendo Wii and the DS. I can't say I'm a huge fan of these games. Pac-Moto is essentially you knocking enemies off a board, and Pac-and-Roll kind of reminds me of Kirby and the Rainbow Curse games. You could tell Pac-and-Roll was designed for a touchscreen because playing this with a controller, it's rough. Now, Pac-Man Battle Royale. I actually have some experience with this game here. There's a barcade that I visit here in Houston called Cidercade. Matter of fact, I filmed a vlog there, so check it out if you haven't. Link in the description. This game is extremely fun in the arcade, but unfortunately it does not translate to the home console by yourself. It does support local multiplayer, but no online play, so this does not have much replay value for me at all. But in the arcade, it's fantastic. So Pac-Man Museum Plus is a fun compilation with some of Pac-Man's most notable games. The only disappointment is that the 3D platformers are nowhere to be found, but besides that, if you never got a chance to experience some of these classic games, this is a great way to experience Pac-Man in one great convenient package. I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.